My name is Emily Harper, and for the first 18 years of my life, I lived at 1427 Maple Street in a sleepy suburb nestled halfway between Akron and Cleveland, Ohio. If you ever cruised through our neighborhood on a lazy Saturday in June, you'd swear you'd time traveled into one of those old Norman Rockwell paintings. Perfectly spaced two-story colonials with crisp white siding and glossy black shutters, wide green lawns mowed in neat diagonal stripes, kids weaving through the streets on bikes with streamers flying from the handlebars, dads out washing SUVs in driveways while moms leaned over backyard fences gossiping over iced tea. In fall, the sugar maples turned the whole block into a blazing tunnel of red and gold. Come winter, every house tried to outdo the next with Christmas lights, icicle strands dripping from gutters, glowing reindeer on roofs, the entire street lit up like a department store window. Our house was textbook, white colonial, black shutters, wide front porch with two wooden rocking chairs that collected more dust than use because Mom swore they trapped pollen. A massive sugar maple dominated the front yard, dropping sticky helicopters in spring that got stuck in your hair and piles of fiery leaves in autumn that Dad raked with military precision every weekend. Mom's flower beds were the envy of the block, waves of red salvia and white petunias in summer, rust-colored mums and pumpkins stacked artfully on the steps in fall. Neighbors actually slowed their cars to compliment her, and she'd wave from the porch with that humble little smile like it was no big deal, even though she spent hours on her hands and knees pulling every last weed. From the outside, the Harpers were the family everyone else wanted to be. Dad, Tom Harper, steady union man at the auto plant, building transmissions for Ford F-150s, good health insurance, pension on the horizon, overtime whenever money got tight. He came home smelling like metal shavings and honest sweat, boots heavy on the linoleum. Mom, Diane, queen of the church bake sales, PTA treasurer when I was in elementary, then part-time nurse's aide at the county hospital once I could be trusted with a house key. She knew every neighbor's birthday, every kid's allergy, every casserole recipe that could feed a grieving family. And me, the only child, straight-A student, debate team captain, yearbook editor, honor society, the whole package. We sat in the same pew at First Presbyterian every Sunday morning, sang the hymns in three-part family harmony, shook the pastor's hand on the way out like clockwork. Old ladies in floral dresses pinched my cheeks after service and told Mom, "Diane, you've raised her right." Mom would beam like she'd just been handed a blue ribbon at the county fair. Inside those walls, though, love had a price tag. I didn't recognize it at the time. How could I? It was the only version of love I knew. It started with the small moments, the ones that felt completely normal because they happened every single day. When I was 7, I knocked over a full glass of grape juice on Mom's brand new beige living room carpet, the one she'd clipped coupons for months to afford. I stood there, frozen, watching the purple stain bloom like ink in water. Mom walked in, took one look, and didn't raise her voice. She just sighed that deep, bone-tired sigh, grabbed the carpet cleaner and a rag, and got down on her knees. "It's okay, honey," she said softly, scrubbing slow circles. "I'll get it out. I only wanted one nice thing in this house that I didn't have to worry about every second." Then she pulled me into a hug that smelled like lemon pledge and fabric softener, and I buried my face in her shoulder, whispering sorry over and over, until she shushed me and said, "You're more important than any old carpet." I felt terrible, then forgiven, then wrapped in the warmest love imaginable. That was the cycle. Dad's lessons were quieter, but no less powerful. Most years, he worked second shift, out the door by 2, home after 11. When he walked in, I'd run to meet him at the garage door. Some nights, he'd swing me up, call me his best girl, let me smell the cold night air still clinging to his jacket. Most nights, though, he'd head straight for the recliner, kick off his steel-toed boots, crack open a Miller Lite, and flip on whatever game was in season. If I bounced in right then, wanting to show him my spelling test or begging him to play catch, he'd rub the back of his neck, let out a long exhale, and say, "Em, Daddy's been standing on concrete 12 hours straight, so you can have that pretty canopy bed upstairs and new school clothes every year. Can't a man just sit for 5 minutes?" I'd shrink back fast. tiptoe to my room, play silently with my Barbies until the seventh inning stretch when he'd call me over, pat the arm of the chair, and let me curl up against him while he explained balls and strikes. That was love, earned after I'd been patient and understanding. By middle school, I'd become an expert at reading the emotional temperature of the house. I could tell Mom's mood by the way she shut the kitchen cabinets. Soft meant everything was fine. Sharp slams meant someone, usually me, had upset the balance. I knew Dad's silence could swing from peaceful to thunderous, depending on whether the plant had approved overtime that week. I learned to anticipate needs, to fix problems before they became problems. Good report card? I'd hand it over with a smile, then immediately offered to fold laundry or set the table. Debate trophy? I thanked Mom for every Saturday she spent driving me to tournaments before she could mention it. Church Christmas pageant solo? I made sure to tell her how beautiful she looked in her red dress so she wouldn't feel overshadowed. Everything stayed balanced. Everything stayed perfect. I thought that's how love worked in every family. You kept the people who loved you comfortable, and they kept loving you back. Simple transaction. I didn't know yet that love could be given freely, no strings, no silent invoices. High school turned the volume up on everything. Honors classes, student council president, editor-in-chief of the school paper. Teachers started saying I was college material, big places. Gaudet's counselors slipped glossy brochures for NYU and Columbia into my backpack. I started dreaming past the Ohio state line, past the lake effect snow and the rust-gult sky. But that's for the next chapter. For now, just picture 17-year-old me standing on that perfect front porch, waving at passing neighbors, smiling like my life was weightless. Because I worked overtime to make it look that way. Because I believed if anyone ever saw the truth, the constant guilt, the quiet control, the way love always felt like a debt I could never quite repay, it would all come crashing down. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, the control, the emotional manipulation that can live behind the prettiest curtains on the nicest street in town. I'm talking now, and once I start, I'm not stopping until you know exactly how deep it went and how I finally broke the surface. I was 5 the day I learned the real rules of love in our house. It was one of those perfect early spring Saturdays in Ohio. The snow finally melted into muddy patches, the air smelled like wet grass and possibility, and the sun felt warm enough to trick you into thinking winter was gone for good. I'd been outside for what felt like forever to a kindergartner, pushing my little red plastic shopping cart up and down the driveway, loading it with dandelions, sticks, and random pebbles I pretended were groceries for my imaginary family. My cheeks were flushed pink, mittens soaked through, hair tangled from the breeze. I was completely lost in my game. Then Mom's voice floated from the back door. "Emily Harper, time to come in, dinner's ready." I could smell the spaghetti sauce simmering all the way outside, garlic and oregano drifting through the screen door. My stomach growled, but I wasn't ready to stop playing. Not yet. "5 more minutes," I called back, pushing the cart one last dramatic loop. The door opened wider. Mom stood there in her faded apron, arms crossed, face already shifting into that look I'd come to know too well. Hurt, disappointed, like I'd let her down in some big way. "5 more minutes," she repeated, voice flat and tired. "Fine, I'll just eat alone then, after I spent all afternoon cooking for you." The words hit me like ice water. My cart rolled to a stop. I dropped the handle and ran toward the house as fast as my short legs would carry me, boots clomping on the concrete. "No, Mommy, I'm coming. I'm sorry." She didn't move, just watched me scramble up the steps. When I reached her, out of breath and suddenly terrified I'd ruined everything, she knelt down and opened her arms. I crashed into them, face pressed against her neck that smelled like sauce and laundry soap. "I didn't mean it," I mumbled into her shirt. "I want to eat with you." "I know, baby," she murmured, stroking my tangled hair. "I just love you so much. It hurts when you'd rather play outside than be with me." That night at the table, I sat pushing meatballs around my plate, feeling the warm glow of having fixed things. I'd made her sad, but then I made her happy again. And when she tucked me in later, extra tight hug and 3 stories instead of 2, I felt safe, loved, like I'd earned it. I didn't know yet that this was lesson one in a curriculum that would last my whole childhood. Dad taught his version slower, subtler, but it stuck just as deep. Tom Harper wasn't loud. He was a sire, a long day at the plant, shoulders slumped, quiet man who carried the weight of providing in every step. I learned to read those shoulders the way kids in other families read bedtime stories. When I was 6, I brought home a Father's Day craft from kindergarten, a crooked paper tie covered in glued-on buttons and way too much glitter. I was bursting with pride, waiting by the door for him to get home. The second his truck pulled into the driveway, I ran out waving it. "Daddy, look what I made for you!" He looked down at the tie, managed a tired smile through the exhaustion. "That's real nice, kiddo." He hung his jacket, kicked off his boots in the garage, headed straight for the recliner. The Indians were starting. I followed him like a puppy. "Can you wear it tomorrow? Can we play catch after dinner?" He sank into the chair, cracked open a beer. I've been on the line since 6 this morning. My back's killing me. I just want to watch the game in peace." I stood there, paper tie dangling from my fingers, feeling it wilt. Mom shot me a look from the kitchen. "Let your father rest, honey. He works hard for us." I nodded and retreated. Later, during a commercial, he called me over. I climbed onto his lap, and he slipped the paper tie around his neck, chuckling softly. Best tie I ever owned. I beamed. I'd waited, I'd been understanding, and now I got the reward. By 7, I had a whole system. If Mom was on her hands and knees scrubbing the kitchen floor, I grabbed a rag and helped without being asked. If Dad's favorite show was on, I played in my room with the door closed. When Grandma complained about her arthritis, I drew her pictures with crayons and mailed them in envelopes I decorated with stickers. Every good deed earned something. A hug, an extra cookie, "You're such a good girl." I collected them like gold stars. There were pure joy moments, of course. 4th of July block parties with grills smoking and sparklers after dark, Halloween trick-or-treating in packs while parents trailed behind with thermoses of hot cider, Christmas Eve candlelight service at church, singing Silent Night with Mom's arm around me. But even those carried quiet price tags. After the block party, Mom would mention how she stayed up late baking pies so we wouldn't show up empty-handed. After Halloween, she'd talk about how expensive my costume was that year. After Christmas, there'd be whispers about the January credit card bill. I learned to say thank you early and often, to notice tired eyes, to offer help before it was requested. I thought every family ran on this currency, that love was a careful dance, making sure the people who loved you never regretted it for a second. I didn't know yet that real love doesn't keep a running tab. I didn't know there was a version that didn't require you to make yourself small to fit. I was just a little girl on Maple Street, doing what good daughters do, fixing things, earning love. One apology, one helpful moment, one sacrifice at a time. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can start before you're even old enough to spell your last name. I'm talking now, and the story only gets heavier from here. Senior year hit like a spotlight. Suddenly, everyone, teachers, counselors, even the neighbors, started talking about me like I was headed somewhere big. Straight A's since kindergarten, debate team state champions 2 years running, editor-in-chief of the school paper, student council vice president, National Honor Society. My college resume read like someone who'd been planning this escape since middle school. And in a way, I had. It started with the school newspaper. Freshman year, I signed up for journalism because it fit my schedule. By sophomore year, I was features editor, staying late in the computer lab, rewriting leads until they snapped. Junior year, editor-in-chief. We exposed mold in the locker rooms, ran a series on the lunch program's wasted food, published an anonymous essay from a gay kid who wasn't ready to come out. The paper won state awards, and my byline was on every front page. For the first time, something felt completely mine. No guilt attached, no invisible invoice. Teachers noticed. Mrs. Callahan, my journalism advisor, pulled me aside after class one day. "Harper, you've got a voice. Real colleges are going to fight over you." Guidance counselors started slipping brochures into my backpack. NYU, Columbia, Northwestern, Boston University. I hid them under my mattress at first, pulling them out at night to trace the city skylines with my finger. New York. Subways rattling underground, coffee shops open at 3 a.m., people who didn't know my mom's blood pressure numbers or my dad's overtime schedule. I watched YouTube tours of Washington Square Park, read about NYU's Arthur L. Carter Journalism Institute until I could recite the faculty list. I pictured myself there, backpack, notebook, chasing stories that didn't involve school board budgets or Friday night football scores. I filled out the applications in secret. Early decision to NYU. The essays poured out of me, pieces about growing up in the Rust Belt, watching half of Dad's shift get laid off in '08, learning to listen to the things people didn't say. I hit submit in November, heart hammering so hard I thought the library computer might hear it. Then came the night I told my parents. It was a Thursday in January, snow stacking up against the windows like it wanted in. Mom had made pot roast, Dad's favorite, carrots and potatoes soft the way he liked them. The house smelled like comfort and onions. I waited until dessert, apple pie from the freezer section, because Mom said she hadn't had the energy to bake from scratch that week. I took a breath. I got into NYU, early decision. Scholarship covers most of it, some loans, but the financial aid package is really good. Silence dropped like a curtain. Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Dad stared at his plate like it had betrayed him. Finally, Mom spoke, voice small. New York? That's 8 hours away. Maybe more in traffic. I know, but it's the best journalism program in the country. And the city, internships at real papers, magazines, networks. The city, Dad cut in, voice flat, is expensive, dangerous. You think we can just hop a plane every weekend? No, I'd come home for breaks, summers, holidays. Mom's eyes filled fast, the way they always did when something hurt. Breaks, summers. What about the rest of the time, Emily? My blood pressure's been up again. The doctor says stress is a killer. I felt the familiar twist in my gut, the one that had lived there since I was 5. I'd still help. I could send money once I have a job. And there's Thanksgiving, Christmas. Thanksgiving, Mom repeated, like the word tasted bitter. Thanksgiving? You think 2 days a year makes up for the rest? I raised you better than to just leave us. Dad cleared his throat. We sacrificed a lot for you, kiddo. Private violin lessons you quit after a year, money down the drain, debate tournaments all over the state, gas prices ain't cheap, new clothes every year so you didn't look raggedy next to the rich kids, and now you want to throw it all away for some fancy school halfway across the country? It's not throwing anything away, I said, voice cracking before I could stop it. It's what I've been working for my whole life. Mom dabbed her eyes with her napkin, shoulders shaking. Working for. Right. While I worked double shifts at the hospital when you were little so you could have those dance classes, while your dad pulled overtime during the recession so we didn't lose this house. The guilt crashed over me like a wave, familiar and suffocating. I saw it all in flashes. The overtime checks, Mom coming home with swollen feet, the way they'd skipped vacations so I could go to journalism camp 2 summers in a row. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom crying quietly in the kitchen after I'd gone to bed. I heard Dad's voice, ungrateful. 2 weeks later, I withdrew my acceptance. I told Mrs. Callahan it was family reasons, told my friends it was the money, told the NYU admissions office some polished lie about choosing a different path. I enrolled at Ohio State, in-state tuition, 2-hour drive, safe. The day the acceptance packet arrived, Mom hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat. She whispered, I'm so proud you're staying close. This is what good families do. We stick together. I smiled against her shoulder, felt the warmth I'd chased since kindergarten. Love, security, belonging. But deep down, in a place I didn't look out yet, something went dark. I had chosen them, again. And part of me already knew I'd spend years wondering what my life would have looked like if I hadn't. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can make you bury your biggest dream before you're even old enough to vote. I'm talking now, and the price I paid for that buried dream, That's just the beginning. Chapter 4: The Slow Fade. Ohio State was only a 2-hour drive down I-71 from Maple Street, but stepping onto campus that first move-in day felt like crossing an invisible border into another world. My dorm was a high-rise on North Campus, cinder block walls painted institutional beige, linoleum floors that squeaked under sneakers, a roommate named Jess from Cincinnati who showed up with tie-dye posters, a mini-fridge full of energy drinks, and zero interest in curfews. For the first time in my life, nobody sighed when I left dishes in the sink overnight. Nobody reminded me how much tuition cost every time I asked to borrow the car keys. I could stay out until the libraries closed, eat cold pizza for breakfast, change my major on a whim without explaining it to anyone. I threw myself into journalism, joined The Lantern, the campus daily, within a week, started as a general assignment reporter, then City Beat, then weekend editor. I covered student protests, football scandals, city council fights over campus area bars. Professors encouraged me to pitch nationally, told me my clips were portfolio ready for real papers. I stayed up until dawn in the newsroom rewriting leads, chugging stale coffee from the communal pot, and it felt like flying. No guilt, no weight. But weekends pulled me back like a rubber band stretched too far. Every Friday around noon, my phone would buzz. Mom, how's my college girl? You eating real food or just that cafeteria junk? I worry about your iron levels. I'm good, Mom. Classes are great. You sound tired. Are you sleeping? Dorm beds are terrible for backs. I'd promised to call Sunday. Then Sunday came and the call stretched an hour. Updates on every neighbor's health issue, every sale at Giant Eagle, every twinge in her knees. Then the shift. The house is so quiet without you. I haven't had much appetite. Your dad just watches TV and grunts. The knot in my stomach tightened. I'll come home next weekend. You don't have to, honey. I don't want to guilt you. But of course I went. The drive south felt shorter every time, like the highway was reeling me in. I'd pull into the driveway Friday night, and Mom would be at the door before I turned off the engine, arms open, eyes already glassy, like my return was the best thing that had happened all month. Dad would nod from the recliner, mutter, "Good to see you, kiddo," and ask if I'd brought laundry. I always did. Saturday mornings, grocery run with Mom, pushing the cart slowly while she recounted how expensive everything had gotten since you kids all left for school. Afternoons, yard work with Dad, raking leaves, cleaning gutters, while he reminded me every hour how his back wasn't what it used to be. Evenings, casserole dinner, then photo albums on the couch, Mom narrating every picture like I hadn't lived them. By Sunday night, I was drained, not from studying, but from the constant scanning, saying the right things, noticing when Mom's voice wavered, offering to do one more chore before I left. Back on campus Monday morning, the fog lifted. Classes, newsroom, late-night runs to insomnia cookies with Jess and the other writers, laughing without measuring words, making plans that were only mine. Sophomore year, I landed a paid summer internship at the Columbus Dispatch. Real bylines, real mentors, real clips. I sublet a tiny studio off High Street, bought a futon from Craigslist, hung string lights like Jess had. For 10 weeks, I lived like the city belonged to me. Biking to work, rooftop drinks in the short north, staying out until last call without texting my location to anyone. Then August hit. Mom's voice on the phone sounded thinner. "Your Aunt Linda started chemo. I've been driving her to Cleveland Clinic 3 times a week. It's exhausting." "I'm sorry, Mom, that's a lot." "And the yard, your dad tried to mow last week, but the heat nearly did him in. I'll help soon." I canceled the lease renewal I'd been planning, packed the studio, moved everything back to Maple Street for fall semester, took a part-time gig at a small weekly paper that paid peanuts. Third year brought friends who backpacked Europe on loans, who talked grad school on the coasts without apology. One night over cheap wine in an off-campus apartment, I mentioned a summer investigative program in Chicago. My friend Maya laughed. "Apply. What's stopping you?" I opened my mouth, closed it. Nothing I could name out loud. Thanksgiving break, I brought it up at the dinner table. "There's this fellowship in Chicago, 10 weeks, paid, real investigative work. Applications due soon." Silence. Mom set down the gravy bout carefully. Chicago, that's even farther than New York was. It's just summer. Summer, echoed Dad. Flights aren't cheap, and driving alone that far? Mom's eyes welled. I don't know how I'd manage. My blood pressure's acting up again. The doctor wants less stress, but how can I relax when my only child keeps talking about leaving? The wave hit, guilt, heavy and familiar. It was just an idea. That night, I deleted the application draft. Senior year blurred in safe choices. I graduated with honors, a solid portfolio, and a job offer from a mid-sized paper in Cleveland, 2 hours away, close enough for Sunday dinners. At commencement, Mom cried through the entire ceremony, hugging me so hard my mortarboard tilted. I'm so proud and so relieved you're staying in Ohio where we can see you. I smiled for the photos, felt the warmth I knew by heart. Love, safety, family. But walking across that stage, diploma in hand, I felt the slow fade deepen. The dreams I'd once carried like bright balloons were deflating one quiet compromise at a time. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can slowly erase who you were meant to be. I'm talking now, and the fade was about to turn into something darker. I was 25, 3 years into grinding at the Chronicle in Cleveland, when I met Alex Rivera at the Midwest Journalism Conference in Columbus. It was mid-October, leaves blazing along the Scioto River, air crisp enough for flannel shirts and pumpkin spice everything. The conference was the usual mix: panels on dying print media, ethics in the TikTok age, how to survive another round of layoffs. I'd driven down Friday after deadline, telling myself it was for networking and free coffee, but really, I needed one weekend without the pullback to Maple Street. I spotted him during a Saturday session on data visualization. He sat 2 rows ahead, leaning forward, stylus tapping a tablet. Dark hair a little overgrown, flannel over a faded band tee, the kind of casual that looked effortless because it was. When the speaker flashed a god-awful infographic, his hand shot up. "Alex Rivera," he said, standing, "graphic designer from Pittsburgh. Respectfully, this chart is a crime. Too many clashing colors, no visual hierarchy, and those pie slices are lying harder than a senator during election season." The room erupted in laughter. Even the panelists grinned. I laughed louder than I meant to. After the session, I lingered by the coffee urn, pretending to read the program. He appeared beside me, pouring creamer into a paper cup. "Crime against humanity, huh? Bold take on a bar graph." He turned, grinned. "Guilty, but someone had to say it." We talked for 20 minutes. Bad design, worse headlines, the Pirates' endless rebuild. He was easy. No heavy pauses, no reading the air for mood shifts. When the next bell rang, he scribbled his number on the back of my name badge. "Real coffee later? Not this hotel sludge. There's a spot downtown." I said yes before the old voice in my head could list reasons not to. We met at 4 in Fox in the Snow in German Village. Exposed brick, fresh croissants, line out the door. He'd saved a tiny table by the window. Coffee turned into soup and sandwiches, then a walk through Schiller Park as the sun dipped low. He asked about my opioid series running in the Chronicle, listened like he actually cared about sources and public records requests. When I mentioned growing up in a small town near Akron, he just nodded. "Close family?" "Yeah," I said. "Real close." He didn't pry. We texted non-stop after that. Playlists swapped, his full of indie rock and 90s hip-hop, mine heavy on Springsteen and Phoebe Bridgers, memes about deadline meltdowns, goodnight texts that started innocent and got flirty. He visited Cleveland in November for a hockey game, took me to the West Side Market for pierogies, then a dive bar in Ohio City with the best old-school jukebox. I drove to Pittsburgh in December, met his crew at a house party where nobody asked why I wasn't married or when I planned kids. We kissed for the first time on his couch during a snowstorm, Die Hard paused on TV, city lights flickering across the Allegheny River. Alex was different. He'd grown up outside Philly. Parents split when he was 10, mom a nurse, dad a long-haul trucker he saw a few weekends a year. No big drama, just regular messy. He'd worked nights at a print shop to pay for Pitt, graduated with a design degree and zero debt because he'd hustled scholarships, moved to Pittsburgh for the hills, the bridges, the affordable rent. His apartment was chaos in the best way. Half-finished canvases, thriving plants he somehow kept alive, a rescue cat named Pixel who hated everyone except him. He talked about family without the weight I carried. Mom calls Sundays, but if I miss one, she doesn't take it personal. Dad sends dumb memes. That's it. I waited for the catch. There wasn't one. One January night, snow piling up outside my Lakewood window, I was on FaceTime. I'd just hung up from Mom. An hour of neighbor updates, rising prescription costs, how quiet the house felt without me. Alex asked, "How'd the call go?" "Same," I sighed. "She misses me, worries." He paused. "Em, you know you don't owe them every weekend, right? You're allowed your own life." The words landed soft but sharp. No judgment, just truth. I brushed it off. "It's not like that. They're family. That's what you do." "Is it? Or is it what you've always done because it's what they expect?" I didn't answer, but the question burrowed. Over the next year, Alex became my safe place. Long drives every other weekend, me to Pittsburgh, him to Cleveland, sometimes meeting halfway in Youngstown for diner pie that tasted like childhood. He read my drafts, pushed me to pitch bigger outlets. When I mentioned a fellowship in D.C., he didn't list sacrifices. He said, "You'd crush it. Apply." For the first time, someone saw my ambition as a shared future, not competition with duty. But every drive home to Maple Street sharpened the contrast. Mom's hubs lingered longer, eyes scanning for signs I'd stay. Dad's grumbles about gas money louder. Calls escalated. Small ailments, lonely evenings, subtle reminders of what they'd given up. Alex never complained when I canceled last minute because they need me. He just said, "Give them my best," and waited. One April evening in Pittsburgh, after a rough visit home, I sat on his couch, head on his shoulder. "I don't know how to do both, be the daughter they want and the person I'm becoming with you." He pulled me closer. "You don't have to choose between being kind and having boundaries. Real love doesn't make you pay forever." I wanted to believe him. I wasn't ready yet, but for the first time, someone had named it out loud. Maybe guilt wasn't love, and the crack in the foundation widened. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can make a good man's clear sight feel like betrayal. I'm talking now, and meeting Alex, that was the beginning of seeing myself clearly too. I turned 27 on a gray March day in Cleveland, the kind where lake effect clouds hang low and the wind off Erie cuts right through your coat. Alex drove up from Pittsburgh with a homemade carrot cake, cream cheese frosting, a little lopsided because he'd baked it himself, and a bottle of Prosecco we popped on my tiny balcony while snow flurries danced over Lakewood. We spent the weekend holed up in my apartment, old movies on the couch, Thai takeout, slow mornings with coffee and no schedule. For 48 hours, life felt light, almost weightless. Then, Sunday evening, as we packed his overnight bag, my phone lit up with Mom's ringtone. I answered on speaker while folding his hoodie. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" Her voice was small, shaky. "Hope you had a nice birthday, honey. I just wanted to let you know I'm heading to the ER, chest pains. Probably nothing serious, but they want to run tests." My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on stairs. I looked at Alex. He nodded once. "Go." "I'm on my way," I said. "Text me which hospital." The drive south on I-71 was a blur, wipers slapping sleet, radio off, every mile tightening the vise around my chest. I arrived at Akron General just after 9. Mom was in a curtained bay, hooked to monitors, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her in the paper gown. Dad sat in the corner chair, face gray under the fluorescent lights. "It's just palpitations," Mom said weakly when I rushed in. "High blood pressure flare-up. Doctor thinks stress." I stayed all night, holding her hand while machines beeped steady rhythms. Tests ruled out heart attack, elevated BP, anxiety spike, nothing more. By morning, they sent her home with new meds and a stern lecture about reducing stressors. 2 weeks later, I quit the Chronicle. I gave my editor, Carla, 2 weeks' notice on a Monday morning, mumbling something about family health issues. She didn't fight it, just handed me a glowing reference letter and said, "Don't let them swallow you whole, Harper." I packed my Lakewood apartment in 3 frantic days. The saggy blue couch went to a coworker, plants to the neighbor downstairs, boxes stacked into my Civic until the rear view was useless. Alex helped load the last ones, quiet the whole time. "You sure?" he asked in the parking lot, snow starting to stick on the ground. "No," I admitted, "but what else can I do?" He hugged me hard, like he could transfer strength through his jacket. "Call me every day, promise?" I moved back into my childhood bedroom on Maple Street, the same pale blue walls, same canopy bed, same faded glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that barely glowed anymore. Mom cried happy tears the day I carried in the first box. Dad clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Good to have you home where you belong." I found an admin job at a local insurance agency. Data entry, phones, benefits package. It paid enough and left evenings free for cooking, driving Mom to follow-ups, helping Dad with spring yard work now that the snow had melted. The days blurred into a numb routine. Mornings, brew coffee, pack Dad's lunch, remind Mom about her pills. Afternoons, cubicle work. Then grocery runs if the list was long. Evenings, cook whatever was on sale, meatloaf, tuna casserole, spaghetti, while Mom sat at the kitchen table recounting every neighbor's drama and every twinge in her body. Nights, dishes, fold laundry, collapse by 10. Gratitude was sparse. Instead, gentle nudges. "I don't know what we'd have done without you," Mom would say, sighing as I scrubbed pots. "Your dad's knees are worse this year. Lucky you're here to handle the heavy stuff." If I mentioned maybe freelancing on the side, the air shifted. Writing again? Mom's hand to her chest. All that stress after what happened to me? I stopped mentioning it. Alex visited once a month, booking a hotel because Dad insisted the pull-out couch murdered backs. Visits were polite but tense, Mom asking pointed questions about his career stability, Dad turning the TV volume up during dinner. I drove Alex back to the interstate each time, feeling like I was apologizing for breathing. Our phone calls shortened. He stayed patient, but I heard the distance growing. One humid July night, everyone asleep, I sat on the back porch steps with crickets screaming in the yard. Fireflies blinked like tiny warnings. The house was quiet, except for Dad's snoring drifting through the screen. I opened my laptop for the first time in months. The screen glowed harsh in the dark. I clicked my old portfolio folder, clips from the Chronicle, the opioid series I'd once been proud of. I opened one and read my own words like they belonged to someone else. I hadn't written anything new in nearly a year. No pitches, no journal, no dreams beyond tomorrow's menu. A wave rose, panic, grief, rage, all at once. I slammed the laptop shut like it had burned me. Inside, passing Mom's room, I saw the door cracked, nightlight on. She was awake, sitting up watching infomercials on mute. "Everything okay, honey?" she whispered. "Yeah," I lied, "just getting water." "You work so hard taking care of us," she said, sighing. "Come sit a minute." I sat on the bed edge. She took my hand. "Having you here, it saved me. I was so lost when you were gone." I nodded, throat burning. Love, duty, the warmth I'd chased my whole life. But that night, it felt like slow drowning. The next weekend, Alex texted, "Come to Pittsburgh, just one night. No family, no obligations, please." I almost said no, almost typed the usual excuse. Instead, I told my parents I had a work retreat in Columbus, my first lie in years. The drive east felt like breaking the surface after too long underwater. Alex met me at a little Italian spot in Lawrenceville, red sauce, candlelight, Sinatra low in the background. We ate pasta, drank too much Chianti, laughed about nothing important. Then his apartment, pizza box open, dumb action movie paused. I finally said it. I don't recognize myself anymore. I came home to help, and now I'm just erased. He listened without interrupting. I love them, I whispered, voice breaking. But I'm disappearing. Alex pulled me close. You're still there, Em, and you don't have to vanish to love them. I cried then, ugly, shaking sobs into his shirt. When I woke the next morning, sunlight through his blinds, city sounds outside, something shifted. Not fixed, not free, but awake. And then my phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. I answered, her voice small, terrified. Emily, there's something I need to tell you, something I've never told anyone. If you don't come home tonight, I don't know if I'll have the courage again. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can hide secrets big enough to shatter everything. I'm talking now, and that call, it changed every rule I thought I knew. I hung up on Mom mid-sentence, grabbed my keys, and was back on I-71 South before Alex could even process what I'd heard. The drive through the night was a nightmare. Rain turning to sleet, semis spraying my windshield, every mile feeling like it dragged me backward into the life I'd just started questioning. Mom's words echoed on loop. Something I've never told anyone. If you don't come home tonight. I got to Maple Street just after 2 a.m. The porch light was on, the only glow on the whole block. Mom was waiting in the kitchen, still in her robe, sitting at the table with a single mug of tea gone cold. Dad was nowhere, probably asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. She looked up when I walked in, dripping sleet onto the linoleum. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed like she'd been crying for hours. "Sit," she said quietly. No hug, no thank you for coming, just that one word. I sat across from her, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. She slid an envelope across the table, yellowed, edges soft and curled from years of handling. No stamp, no return address, just my name in faded blue ink. Emily. "It's from your real father," she said. The room tilted. I stared at the envelope like it might bite. "What?" Mom took a shaky breath. "Tom isn't your biological father." The words landed like a bomb, but quiet. No explosion, just everything inside me going still. She kept talking, voice low, like she was afraid the walls would hear. "I was married once before Tom, briefly. His name was Daniel Reed. We met right after high school. He was charming, played guitar in a band, talked big dreams about moving to California. We got married too young, too fast. When I got pregnant with you, he panicked, said he wasn't ready, that a baby would ruin everything. One day he just left, packed his guitar, and vanished. I never heard from him again. I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, thoughts scrambling. Tom worked with me at the hospital back then. He'd always been sweet on me. When he found out I was pregnant and alone, he proposed, said he'd love you like his own. We got married before you were born. He's the only father you've ever known, the only one who mattered." I finally found my voice. "Why tell me now?" Her eyes filled. "Because I'm tired of carrying it, and because, well, the guilt I've put on you your whole life, it started with him abandoning me. I was so terrified you'd leave too, that you'd find out and choose him or just go. So I held on tighter, made you feel like leaving would destroy me, like you owed us for everything. It wasn't fair. It was my fear, not your burden." I stared at the envelope. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet, lined paper, torn from a notebook. The handwriting was messy, young. "Diane, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I'm not cut out to be a dad. You'll be better off without me dragging you down. Tell the kids someday I loved her the best I could, which wasn't enough. Take care. Daniel." No date, no last name for me, just that. I read it 3 times. It didn't feel real. "All these years," I whispered, "the overtime, the sacrifices you talked about, some of it was because you were proving you were better than him?" Mom nodded, tears spilling now. "I wanted you to know Tom chose us, that he stayed when the real one ran, but I'd twisted it, made you pay for my pain. Every time you talked about moving away, NYU, Chicago, even Cleveland, it felt like Daniel all over again, like abandonment was in your blood. I laughed, but it came out broken. So the guilt trips, the health scares, the weird not getting younger, it was all because you were scared I'd turn out like a man I've never met? She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. I was wrong, she said. I see that now. That night in the ER, when they said it was stress and anxiety, it hit me. I've been making you carry my trauma your whole life, and you're not him. You're you, and you deserve to live without this weight. Dad's footsteps creaked on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway in his old robe, hair wild from sleep. He looked between us, knew instantly something big had happened. "Diane told you," he said. Not a question. I nodded. He walked over slowly, sat heavy in the third chair. "I never wanted you to find out like this, or at all, maybe." "Why?" My voice cracked. "Did you think I'd love you less?" He rubbed his face, eyes red. "I was scared. Yeah, scared you'd go looking for him, or that knowing I wasn't blood would change things. I've loved you since the day you were born, Em. Changed your diapers, taught you to ride a bike, stayed up for your nightmares. But there's always that little voice saying, maybe it's not enough if it's not real." I stared at him, the man who'd coached my t-ball team, who'd worked double shifts during the recession, who'd clapped loudest at every debate tournament. "You're my dad," I said. "Biology doesn't change that." He let out a shaky breath, like he'd been holding it for 30 years. We sat there until dawn, talking in circles. Anger, tears, questions, small apologies. No big resolutions, just the truth finally out in the open, raw and ugly and necessary. I stayed 3 days. We didn't fix everything, but we started. And when I left that Wednesday morning, envelope in my purse, something had shifted. The guilt still whispered, but for the first time I could name where it came from, and naming it was the beginning of letting it go. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can grow from secrets buried deeper than roots. I'm talking now, and the secret? It wasn't the end. It was the crack where the light finally got in. I stayed on Maple Street for 3 days after The Secret came out. 3 days of raw, messy conversations that left us all exhausted, voices hoarse, eyes swollen, the kitchen table turning into ground zero for 30 years of unspoken things. We didn't fix everything. We barely scratched the surface, but we talked, really talked, about Daniel's letter, about Mom's fear of abandonment bleeding into every decision she made for me, about Dad's quiet terror that biology might matter more than the love he'd poured out since the day I was born. By the third morning, something crystallized inside me. I couldn't stay. Not full time, not as the permanent fix for their pain. I'd come home to help after Mom's health scare, quit my job, shrunk my life to fit theirs again. But knowing the root of the guilt, the secret shame that had twisted their love into something possessive, made it impossible to keep paying the old price. I packed while they were at church that Wednesday. Not everything, just what I needed to start over. Laptop, journals, clothes for a couple weeks, the box of old clips from my journalism days. 2 suitcases and a backpack. Enough to leave without it looking like I was running for my life. Alex had already found me a month-to-month sublet in Columbus. Third floor walk-up in Victorian Village, big windows, cheap rent. He'd drive up Friday to help move whatever else I wanted. I rehearsed the conversation in my head all morning. Calm, loving, firm. They got home just after noon, carrying a bakery box of donuts like it was any other Sunday, except it was Wednesday and everything was different. We sat at the same kitchen table where the bomb had dropped 3 nights earlier. "Mom, Dad," I started, hands folded to keep them from shaking. "I need to tell you something." Mom's face tightened immediately. Dad set down his coffee mug slow. "Moving? But you just got settled here, after the hospital, after everything we—" "I know," I said gently, I came back because you needed help, and I don't regret it, but I can't stay forever. The secret, it explains a lot, but it doesn't change what I need now. I need space. I need to write again, to rebuild the life I put on hold. Dad cleared his throat. Columbus is 2 hours. You could commute if you really wanted the job there. I don't want to commute. I want a clean break, my own place, my own routine. Mom's eyes filled fast, the way they always had when I threatened to leave. A clean break? From us? After we finally told you the truth? After Tom raised you like his own when no one else would? I felt the old pull, the guilt rising like floodwater. Every memory flashed. Mom's hospital night, Dad's overtime stories, the way they'd looked at me like I was their whole world. But I didn't fold this time. I'm not breaking from you. I'm setting boundaries. I'll visit, I'll call every week, I'll help when there's a real crisis, but I can't be here every day managing your emotions so you don't feel abandoned. That's not my job anymore. Mom stood up, chair scraping loud against the floor. Not your job? We gave you everything. A stable home when your real father ran off, food, clothes, college money we scraped together. I almost died from stress when you left before, and now you're doing it again, right after we opened our hearts? Tears streamed down her face, big and dramatic, like the kind I'd seen my whole life. Dad finally spoke, voice rough. You're ungrateful, Em, plain and simple. Blood might not tie us, but love should. You don't just walk away when it gets hard. The word ungrateful hit like a slap. I stood too, heart racing. I'm not walking away, and I'm not ungrateful. I've given years, weekends, summers, my career to make sure you never felt alone. But love shouldn't feel like a life sentence. I'm 30 years old. I deserve to build something that's mine. Mom collapsed back into her chair, sobbing openly. Go then, just go. See if we're still here when you realize what you've thrown away. Dad stood, walked out to the garage without another word. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I stayed at the table a minute longer, watching Mom cry, feeling the weight of 3 decades pressing down. Then I went upstairs and finished packing. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the old house sounded like accusation. I texted Alex at 3 a.m. It was brutal. He replied instantly, "You did the hardest part. I'm so proud of you." Morning came gray and drizzly. Mom stayed in her room. Dad left early for coffee with his old plant buddies, didn't say goodbye. I loaded the car alone, suitcases in the trunk, backpack on the passenger seat. I left a note on the counter, simple, handwritten. I love you both more than you'll ever know. This isn't goodbye. It's me choosing to live. I'll call when I'm settled. M. The drive north on I-71 felt endless and too quick at once. Rain streaked the windows, wipers keeping time with my pulse. Every mile, the guilt screamed, turn around, fix it, stop their pain. But underneath, quieter but growing stronger, was relief. Air. The first real breath in years. I arrived in Columbus just after noon. Alex was waiting outside the sublet, coffee in hand, smile ready. He hugged me the second I stepped out. You okay? No, I said into his jacket, but I will be. We carried boxes up 3 flights, unpacked basics, ordered pizza, sat on the bare floor because the couch wasn't coming until next week. That night, my phone blew up. Voicemails from Mom, long and tear-soaked, texts from Dad, "You'll regret this one day." I didn't answer. Not yet. Instead, I opened my laptop. Blank page, cursor blinking. I typed the first line of what would become the essay that changed everything. I grew up thinking guilt was love. The confrontation broke something old and brittle, and in the pieces, I finally started finding myself. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can force you to choose between them and your own survival. I'm talking now, and choosing myself, It hurt like hell, but it was the first honest thing I'd done in years. The Columbus sublet turned permanent faster than I expected. 1 month became 6, then a full year lease on the third floor walk-up in Victorian Village. Old brick building, creaky hardwood floors, tall windows that flooded the rooms with light on good days and rattled in the wind on bad ones. I painted the living room a soft gray, hung thrift store art and the string lights Jess had taught me to love back in college. Alex moved in officially after 8 months. He kept his Pittsburgh clients, worked remotely, brought Pixel, the cat, who immediately claimed the sunniest windowsill as his throne. Our life settled into something simple and ours. Morning coffee on the tiny balcony, watching dog walkers below, evenings cooking together with music playing, weekends hiking the metro parks or driving out to Hocking Hills just because we could. But the real work wasn't decorating or cohabiting, it was holding the line with Maple Street. The first months after the confrontation were war. My phone became a minefield. Voicemails from Mom, long, tearful, sometimes angry, about how the house felt empty, how she couldn't sleep, how neighbors asked where I'd gone and she didn't know what to say. Texts from Dad, short, clipped. Your mother's not eating well. Yard's getting away from us. Call when you have time for family. I didn't answer right away. I talked to Alex first, then to the therapist I started seeing twice a week in German Village, Dr. Patel, calm and direct, who specialized in family enmeshment and adult children of emotionally immature parents. Guilt is the tool they know works, she said in one early session. It always has. But guilt isn't love. It's control wearing love's face. Healthy love supports your growth. It doesn't punish it. Those words hit like a gut punch. I cried in her office until the tissues ran out. I set rules, non-negotiable ones I wrote on a sticky note and stuck to my fridge. Scheduled calls only, Sunday evenings and Wednesday mornings. Visits once a month, planned ahead, 1 overnight maximum. No unscheduled emergencies unless it was a real hospital visit. Everything else waited. The first time I let a Tuesday night call go to voicemail, my hands shook so badly I dropped my phone. I waited until Sunday to call back. Mom answered on the first ring. Finally! I'm calling on our scheduled day, I said, practicing the calm tone Dr. Patel and I had rehearsed. How was your week? Long pause. You didn't pick up Tuesday. I'd fallen in the backyard, twisted my ankle pretty bad. My heart lurched. Are you okay? Did you see a doctor? No, but I could have broken something if you'd answered. I'm glad you're not seriously hurt. Next time, text me and I'll call on Wednesday like we agreed. Her voice sharpened. So now I have to make an appointment to talk to my own daughter? Yes, I said. That's the boundary I need to stay healthy. I love you and I want us to keep talking, but it has to work for me too. Silence. Then tears. You've changed. That city's made you hard. The call ended early. I hung up and cried on the balcony until Alex found me, wrapped me in a blanket, made chamomile tea without a word, but I held the line. They tested it constantly the first year. Silent treatment after short calls, dramatic voicemails left anyway, packages arriving unannounced, my favorite childhood cookies, a framed photo of the 3 of us at my high school graduation, with notes like, thought you might want to remember where you came from. One planned October visit, Mom greeted me at the door with puffy eyes. We're managing, she said before I could ask. No need to worry. You've got your important life now. The chill lasted the whole weekend. Dad barely spoke. Dinner conversation was forced. Weather and sports only. When I left Sunday morning, Mom's hug was stiff. Drive safe, she said. Don't feel like you have to rush back. I cried the entire drive home. But slowly, painfully, things shifted. I kept showing up on my terms, monthly visits, holiday dinners when I chose them, helping with actual needs, researching a cleaning service when Mom's arthritis flared, setting up grocery delivery for bad weeks. I sent cards for no reason, called on their anniversary, listened without jumping in to solve everything. And I rebuilt myself. Freelance writing started small, a local magazine piece on suburban recovery programs, then another on Rust Belt economics. I pitched regional outlets, landed a feature in Columbus Monthly. Therapy moved to weekly, then bi-weekly. I journaled again, raw pages about anger, grief, the little girl who thought love hurt. Alex was my anchor. Never pushed, just held space. When nightmares of mom's tears woke me, he listened. When a byline landed, he took me for celebratory tacos and margaritas. By the second year, the dynamic changed in ways I never expected. Mom's calls grew shorter, lighter, less crisis, more real updates. The garden's beautiful this year, tomatoes like you wouldn't believe. Your dad joined a bowling league with the guys from the plant. Dad started texting dumb dad jokes again, the same corny ones he'd told when I was 10. One Sunday spring call, Mom said quietly, "I started that therapy group at church I mentioned, for parents of adult kids. It's eye-opening." My throat tightened. "I'm really glad, Mom." Not a full apology, but a step. Boundaries weren't a wall, they were a bridge, sturdy enough for real connection without me losing my footing. Thanksgiving that year, I hosted in Columbus. They drove up, stayed in a hotel, came for dinner, no chores, no guilt. We ate turkey, watched football, laughed at old stories. When they left, Mom hugged me warm and long, but let go without tears. Driving home later, windows down, music loud, I felt it deep in my chest. I was still their daughter, but I was my own person first. And the love we were building now, it was starting to feel like freedom. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can force you to rebuild from the ground up. I'm talking now, and rebuilding, it's the hardest, bravest thing I've ever done. 2 years after I drove away from Maple Street with that yellowed envelope in my purse, I turned 32 on a crisp December morning in Columbus. Snow dusted the brick streets below our balcony, holiday lights already twinkling on the old houses in Victorian Village. Alex woke me with coffee and a kiss, Pixel the cat purring at our feet like he'd planned it. Life felt steady, earned, not borrowed. That same week, an email landed in my inbox that changed everything, again. Subject: acceptance, the weight of love. It was from a major national magazine. They wanted my personal essay, the one I'd written in raw bursts after the confrontation, the one where I finally told the whole truth, the guilt disguised as love, the secret biological father, the years I'd shrunk myself to keep my parents from feeling abandoned. Lead feature, full spread, payment enough to cover 6 months of rent. I read it 3 times before I called out to Alex. He ran in from the kitchen, dish towels still in hand, and when I showed him the screen, he whooped loud enough to scare the cat. That essay dropped online in late January and went viral by February. Thousands of shares overnight, comments flooding in. "This is my mother. I cried in the grocery store reading this. Thank you for naming what I felt my whole life." It hit Reddit's front page, got picked up by newsletters, even sparked a segment on a popular podcast about toxic family dynamics. Bookers called for interviews. Agents reached out about expanding it into a memoir. I did podcasts from our couch, phone pressed to my ear while snow fell outside the window. Everyone asked the same question: how did your parents take it? I was honest every time. It's ongoing. We're still healing. Because we were. The first call after publication came on a scheduled Sunday evening. I answered in the kitchen, Alex quietly doing dishes to give me space. Mom's voice was softer than I'd heard it in years. "I read every word, Emily." Silence stretched. I braced for tears, anger, defense. "It was hard," she went on. "Seeing myself through your eyes, how my fear hurt you. Some parts made me cry for days, but you wrote it true and fair. I'm sorry for the guilt I loaded on you, for making you feel like leaving was betrayal. I was carrying Daniel's abandonment, and I put it on your shoulders. That wasn't right." My throat closed. I gripped the counter. "Thank you for saying that, Mom." I've been going to therapy, not just the church group, real one-on-one, learning how to sit with my own stuff instead of handing it to you. Dad got on the extension, something he hadn't done since I was a kid. "Kiddo," he said, voice thick. I read it too, twice. Didn't like seeing my part in it, but you didn't lie. I could have spoken up more, could have told you I was proud without reminding you what it cost. I was scared of losing you, of you finding out about Daniel and thinking less of me, but you turned out stronger than both of us. I'm proud of you, real proud, no strings. I cried then, quiet, relieved tears that had been waiting years. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't the movie version apology where everything ties in a bow, but it was real, and it was enough to keep building on. Visits changed after that. Holidays rotated, Thanksgiving in Columbus one year, Christmas on Maple Street the next. I hosted when I wanted, drove down when I wanted. No more chore lists, no more silent invoices. Conversations went deeper. Mom talked openly about her therapy breakthroughs. Dad showed me his new woodworking shop in the garage, birdhouses, a rocking chair he was finishing for the porch. They asked about my work without the old edge, celebrated my bylines like they were theirs too. One summer weekend, Alex and I drove down for the old block party, the same one I'd grown up attending. Grills smoking, kids running wild, sparklers after dark. Mom hugged me at the door without clinging. Later, sitting on the porch with lemonade as fireflies blinked in the yard, she said quietly, "I used to think love meant keeping you close enough that you couldn't leave. Now I think it means trusting you'll come back because you want to, not because you have to." I squeezed her hand. I always want to. And I did. My career took flight after the essay, speaking gigs at conferences, a book deal for the full memoir, freelance checks turned steady. I mentored young writers online, led workshops on family boundaries and emotional health. Therapy became monthly check-ins, then graduation. Dr. Patel's last words, "You've done the work. Now live it." I did. Spontaneous road trips to Pittsburgh for concerts, quiet evenings writing on the balcony as the city settled below, friends over for game nights, no explanations owing. Alex and I got engaged on a hike in Hocking Hills, ring in his pocket, no grand gesture, just us. One snowy December evening, almost 2 years to the day after The Secret came out, I stood at our kitchen sink, washing dinner dishes. Alex came up behind me, arms around my waist. "Happy?" he asked, reading my quiet. I looked out the window at snow falling soft and steady. Yeah, really happy. Later, curled on the couch under our favorite blanket, I opened my journal. Last entry from right after the confrontation, "I'm terrified, but I'm doing it." New entry, "I'm home, in myself, in this life I chose, finally." I visited Maple Street for Christmas that year, snow deep on the ground, lights strung along the eaves like when I was small. We exchanged gifts, ate ham and scalloped potatoes, watched It's a Wonderful Life, like always. When Alex and I left the next morning, Mom hugged me warm and long, but let go without tears. "Drive safe," she said. "Call when you get home." "I will," I promised. The drive back felt light. Radio playing old holiday songs, Alex singing off-key beside me, no knot in my stomach, no running ledger. I was free. Family could be everything, and now, finally, it was, without costing me myself. They say family is everything, but no one talks about the guilt, control, and emotional manipulation that can hide in even the closest families, until someone speaks up. I spoke, and in speaking, I found freedom. For me, for us, for anyone still reading this, carrying their own weight. You're allowed to put it down. You're allowed to fly.